Now. So we are starting with cardiovascular disorders, and these are disorders which are mentioned in the syllabus: hypertension, atherosclerosis or coronary artery disease, angina pectoralis or myocardial infarction, and yogic diet. So these are the topics which are mentioned, but we'll try to cover a little bit more also regarding the cardiovascular disorders, because cardiovascular disorders are becoming more and more common nowadays, especially in the so-called developed society. The cardiovascular disorders are on the rise to the great extent. And these are the other cardiac disorders, cardiovascular disorders. So, sorry. So CUD or coronary artery disease, then IHD or heart failure, CCF, LVF, all these are technical terms. IHD is a ischemic heart disease. Ischemia means less blood supply to the organ is called ischemia. And when there is less supply of oxygen to the heart, it's called ischemic heart disease. Then there are disorders of the rhythm of the heart. There is a disorder of the valves of the heart. Then there can be a cerebrovascular disorder called a stroke, which of course is known to many people. And there can be a peripheral vascular disease. Again, the cases are on the rise of that peripheral vascular disease, varicose veins and aneurysm, etc. So because of the sitting habits, especially in the lockdown, most people are sitting on the chairs the whole day, those who are doing work from home. So the varicose veins and peripheral disease are on the rise because of that. Just a brief review of that cardiovascular system. So as we know from the name, the cardiovascular system consists of two aspects. One is the cardiac aspect and one is the vascular aspect. Cardiac is referred to the heart. Heart has got four chambers, and the pumping is taking place by the lower chamber, and upper chambers the blood gets filled up. So these are very simple words, the mechanism of the working of the heart. And heart has got its own rhythm. So even though we cut off the nerve supply to the heart will still keep on breathing, because heart has got its own rhythm. So it is not dependent upon, of course there is a nerve supply to the heart which controls everything, controls the heart rate, but still heart has got its own rhythm. So that is the peculiar nature of the heart, and that is how the nature has nature is so great that the heart has evolved in a such a way so that even if there is some damage to the nerve supply, still it will keep on beating, because if the heart stops, everything stops. So no need to say that. So heart is a critical organ of the body, and there is a circulation. There are two kinds of circulation. One is the peripheral circulation and one is the pulmonary circulation. As we know that arteries contain oxygenated blood, so we should not say pure blood and impure blood. There is nothing like pure and impure. The main difference in artery and vein is that arterial blood contains more oxygen and venous blood contains less oxygen. So the arterial blood supplies the oxygen and other nutrients which are absorbed from the digestive tract to all the cells of the body, so that the cells can function optimally. And all the waste products are carried back, they are thrown in the venous circulation, and again they are sent to the appropriate location for disposing it off. So gases are sent to the lungs for disposal, and some other chemicals are sent to the kidneys so that they can be disposed of through the urine. So this is the circulatory system. Only thing is that a pulmonary vein contains oxygenated blood, and pulmonary artery contains the less oxygenated blood. So these are the difference between the pulmonary circulation and the peripheral circulation. And these are the capillaries. The blood vessels divide into smaller and smaller capillaries like roots of the tree, and that's how they supply the blood and nutrient to each and every cell. So the blood vessel, the capillaries are connected to each and every part of the body. So they reach each and every part of the body, so that the blood is supplied to every part of the or all the cells of the body. Then the brain is very critical for the supply of oxygen. If the supply of the oxygen for the brain stops for 3 to 4 minutes, there can be the brain death will start. The neurons will die out, and after some time there will be brain death. So even though you are able to revive the heart, the brain may not be able. You may not be able to revive the brain after 4 to 5 minutes. So this is a critical time for revival of the brain. Some of the other parts of the body can survive without oxygen for longer time, but brain cannot. So we'll go to cardiovascular system, and there is a syndrome called as metabolic syndrome. We will just shortly discuss that. And there are two, the scientists have identified two common shapes of the body. Of course, everybody has got different shape of the body, but these are common shapes of the body. One is the apple-shaped body and one is the pear-shaped body. It is said that apple-shaped body is more prone to cardiovascular disorders. The statistics have shown that a apple-shaped body is more prone to cardiovascular disorders. So these are the, of course, categorization and generalization of the things. The cases will vary from individual to individual. We just in general have displayed this here. This is the metabolic syndrome. Syndrome means a group of disorders. Syndrome means a group of disorders which are manifested together commonly. So commonly these disorders will manifest together. That's why it's called a syndrome. So typically the metabolic syndrome is characterized by the high blood pressure, then high blood sugar, excess body fat around the waist, as we have seen the apple-shaped body, and high cholesterol and triglycerides. It's called as metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome, those people who are having metabolic syndrome are more prone to heart diseases or stroke or diabetes. So these are the people in the risk group, those who are having metabolic syndrome, and that's why these disorders are considered together when we talk about the management of these disorders. Now we'll see what is blood pressure. Now commonly people say that the person has got blood pressure or मेरे को blood pressure है, but as a person in the field of yoga teacher or yoga therapist, we should avoid such kind of loose talk. So we should be careful to use the terminology very properly. Blood pressure is present in everybody. Unless the blood pressure is present, we will not be alive, right? So blood pressure is there in everybody. What we are talking about is a high blood pressure. So there is a difference between hypertension or high blood pressure and only blood pressure. So blood pressure, everybody has got blood pressure. Everybody has got blood sugar. So we should avoid the loose talk that somebody has got sugar. So unless you have got sugar in the blood, you cannot live. So we have to be careful about terminology. We can say somebody has got hyperglycemia or somebody has got diabetes, but we cannot say that somebody has got sugar or somebody has got blood pressure. So what is basically blood pressure? Blood pressure is the pressure or force which is exerted by circulating blood on the arterial wall. So as we know that the heart pumps the blood through the arteries, and whenever it pumps the blood, there is a force exerted on the blood so that the blood should flow to the remotest part of the body. We can take example of our water pump, which is there in our buildings. It is commonly found nowadays that there is a tank on the lower floor or below the floor, and there is a pump attached to that, and the pump will force the water up to the water tank upstairs. So if it is a tower, say 25 floors, the pump forcefully has to put the water which will reach up to the 25th floor. And if you hold that pipe, if you touch that pipe, you will perceive that vibration and pressure which is exerted by that water on the walls of the pipe. The blood pressure is a similar thing. So it is a pressure exerted by the blood on the walls of the blood vessel, and it is required because unless the force is present, then the blood will not be able to reach all the corners of the body, remote parts of the body, and the walls of the arteries and veins are able to sustain this pressure. They are built in for sustaining that pressure of the blood. So they are elastic in nature, as we know that they are made up of smooth muscles. We have discussed that before also, that the walls of the arteries and veins are made up of smooth muscles. And since they are muscles have got elasticity, so they can sustain the pressure of the blood, which is normal pressure of the blood, which is there all the time in our body. So there are two kinds of blood pressure. One is the systolic, one is the diastolic. Systolic is the pressure which is perceived when the heart beats. As we know that heart beats, there is a pulsation of the heart. So there is a rhythm of the heart forces the blood out, and then it relaxes for some movements. So when it relaxes, naturally the pressure of the blood falls down. It's called a diastolic pressure. When the heart pumps the blood, the pressure increases. When the heart relaxes, the pressure decreases. So when we put off our water pump, then you will not be able to feel the pressure on the walls. It does not mean that there is no water in the pipes. The water is there in the pipes, but it doesn't have that kind of pressure to force it upwards. So this is systolic and diastolic. That means that if you measure the blood pressure, the systolic value will always be high and diastolic value will always be low. This is the logic behind higher value of systolic and lower value of diastolic. So these are the factors which are responsible for the pressure of the blood. One is the cardiac output, how much amount of blood the heart is able to force at with one contraction. Again, it relates to the arterial elasticity. As I mentioned that the walls are elastic in nature, they are made up of smooth muscles. So if the muscles are elastic, they can sustain the pressure. If the muscles become rigid, when the walls of the artery become rigid, then the pressure exerted will be more because they are not able to sustain the pressure. As we know, when there is pressure, they will expand slightly. Pressure is less, they will relax slightly. So if the elasticity is less of the heart of the blood vessel walls, then it will not be able to sustain that pressure, and that is one of the causes. That is one of the factors of that. And the peripheral vascular resistance, there is some kind of resistance, some kind of disorders in the periphery, so that will resist the blood flow there, and there will be a backfire. There will backfire the pressure. We know that the heart is pushing the blood with some force, and there is some obstruction there. And because of obstruction, the blood pressure inside the arteries will increase tremendously because it is not able to reach there. So these are the factors which are responsible for maintaining the blood pressure or disorders of the blood pressure. The control of blood pressure is done by autonomous nervous system, as we know, all of us we know. And there are some sensors which are present in the body. Just like we have got sensors of water pump inside the lower tank also and upper tank also. So the sensors will sense the level of the water and then either put off the pump or put in or start the pump accordingly. So similarly, we have got sensors called as baro and chemoreceptors. The baroreceptors sense the blood pressure and chemoreceptors sense the extent of the gases in the blood. So they keep on sensing all the time 24/7, and it is located at different places, and the main baroreceptors are located around the neck area, around the aortic and these are carotid arteries. Aortic arteries are the arteries which are coming out from the heart. They are called aortic arteries. So they also have got these sensors, and main sensors are in the neck also. Then it depends upon various hormones also. There is an antidiuretic hormone which is responsible for control of blood pressure. Then other hormones also are responsible, and there are some chemicals which are present in the body or nervous system which are responsible for control of the blood pressure. So the tendency of the body is to maintain the blood pressure at a particular level all the time. So, and these are the factors, these are complex factors which control the blood pressure of the body. And of course, these are factors which affect the blood pressure also. The factors which control, if something goes wrong in one of the more factors, it will affect the normal blood pressure of the body. So this so-called normal blood pressure is 120 and 80 millimeter of Hg or as mercury. The blood pressure is measured in terms of the millimeters of mercury. As we know, there is an apparatus where there is a mercury present, and the mercury rises as we increase the pressure. That's how we measure the blood pressure, and that's why internationally accepted standard is in terms of millimeters of mercury, how much mercury rises in that apparatus. So it is calibrated according to that rise of mercury. So 120 is the systolic and 80 is the diastolic, which is called as normal blood pressure. Of course, as the research takes place continuously, whatever we call as normal keeps on changing. Earlier times, it was considered that as the age advances, the normal blood pressure limit also will advance. But now, of course, scientists say that it is not so. The 120/80 should be the normal blood pressure for people of every age. That's what now the scientists say. Earlier, it was believed that if your age is 60, and if your systolic blood pressure is 160, it was considered to be normal, but it's not so now. So there is a difference between the blood pressure in sitting and lying down posture. So as a yoga therapist, if you are measuring the blood pressure of the person, make sure that you measure that in the same position before and after. So as a therapist, sometimes we are required to measure the blood pressure. So we should know how to measure the blood pressure. So we should take care that earlier the person's blood pressure was taken in the sitting posture. The next time also blood pressure should be measured in the sitting posture only, so that you can compare properly. Otherwise, there is going to be some discrepancy in that. Now we'll consider this hypertension. Hyper means extra, hypo means low. This is the language of the diseases, medical language. Hypertension means that increase of blood pressure or high blood pressure. Now the scientists have uh, studied it to a great extent, and a lot of studies are going on. So it is for the sake of study or the sake of treatment, it is divided into 4 stages. The stage 1 is called as pre-hypertension, where it is below 140 by 90. So if it is more than 120 by 80 and below or slightly below 140 by 90, that means that a person is likely to get hypertension in future. So one should monitor that. One should try to make some changes in the lifestyle, and then one can prevent the blood pressure or hypertension from going to stage 2 or stage 3. So stage 1 is very important, but unfortunately, stage 1 is very difficult to diagnose. Most of the people don't know that they are in stage 1 or stage 2 of hypertension because there are no symptoms. So unless and otherwise the blood pressure is measured as a routine medical checkup, they are not aware. Most of the people are not aware that they have got this kind of hypertension. Then there is a grade 2 hypertension from 140/90 to 159 to 99. Stage 3 is from 160 to 100, 160/100 to 179, 109, and then stage 4 is 180 to 110 or higher. So these are just the numbers, of course, these mathematics, but many times you will find that some people are having mild hypertension, but still they have got a lot of symptoms, and some people will have moderate hypertension, but they will not be having any symptoms. So these are just the numbers. So one should go as per symptoms also and signs also. Then there is something called as hypotension. Hypotension means less blood pressure. So it is quite common in ladies especially that there are more cases of hypotension in ladies as compared with gents. So 90 by 60 is supposed to be borderline hypotension. 60 by 40 is too low, and 50 by 33 or less than that is too dangerous. So sometimes the blood pressure falls because of the psychological causes also, and we should be careful if it goes below 90/60, then you should be careful of sending the person to the medical expert. The other devices which are commonly used for measuring the blood pressure, this is called as manometer. So it has got, as you can see, there's a bulb here which can be pressed and air can be pumped, and this is a sleeve which is attached to the arm here. And when you attach the sleeve to the arm, the principle is that when you put pressure on this and that sleeve, the blood flow from the arteries will stop, and you measure the pressure where the blood flow stops. So that is the basic technique of measuring the blood pressure, and you can measure systolic as well as diastolic on this column of mercury. It is calibrated, numbers are written there, and there are newer gadgets, of course, the automatic gadgets also, and there are gadgets which doesn't have mercury but it's kind of meter. But this meter works on the spring principle. So after some time, the spring becomes loose and it shows the wrong reading. These automatic devices also many times show wrong reading. But basically, if you take the automatic devices, there is some kind of error in that. So if you choose to use automatic machine, then you check that error, you measure that error along with measurement of this machine, and you will come to know that my machine is showing the figures less by 10 or the figures less by 5, so that you can measure that and you can corroborate with that. So this is also quite useful. Only thing is sometimes the machine goes haywire and shows wrong blood pressure. The most reliable method is this. Of course, nowadays the digital version of this also has come in the market, but it is the age-old measuring device for blood pressure, which is very accurate, and it really gives the proper reading of the blood pressure. The hypertension is of two types. So of course, hypertension means that the blood pressure is higher than normal is called as hypertension, and we have discussed the different categories of that. So there are two types of hypertension. One is called as primary, and one is called as secondary. The primary is so-called essential. I don't know why it's called as essential, but it has been termed as essential in medical textbooks. So primary and secondary. But primary is the type wherein we cannot establish a clear-cut cause of the hypertension. And secondary is because of some kind of other disorder or disease that leads to hypertension. So these are the two types, primary and secondary. And commonly, people have got primary hypertension, and there are very less cases of secondary hypertension. So in primary or essential, the cause cannot be determined exactly. It can be hereditary also. And of course, stress is an important factor for hypertension. And majority of the cases, the stress is the important factor. And now because of the increase in the stress in the society, the hypertension cases are on the rise. It is very rampant. It has become very rampant. And it has been found that majority of the cases of hypertension is undiagnosed. So people are not aware that they are hypertensive unless they develop some kind of signs and symptoms or they go for routine medical checkup. They don't know that they are having hypertension. So that's why screening is very important, especially after a certain age. So doctors are advising screening after the age of 35 nowadays. Earlier it was after 40, but nowadays even 30s they are advising the screening, especially for the people who are in high risk group, that is the hereditary and stress factor. So people, young people working in the IT industry and high risk industries are much prone to the stress and much prone to hypertension leading to cardiovascular disorders. In secondary hypertension, the predisposing factors can be determined. In primary, it cannot be. So it may be secondary to kidney disease, adrenal gland disease, obesity, etc., etc. So these are the secondary hypertension causes. The symptoms may be there, symptoms may not be there. So person will be entirely symptomless. So hypertension is called as silent killer because the person does not know that he is having hypertension many times. But there can be severe headache, fatigue, or confusion, vision problems because increase of the pressure in the capillary of the eyes. So the tiny capillaries can break also because of excess hypertension, and that can cause to damage in the eyes also because those are very small blood vessels which are having very, very thin walls. If there is excessive pressure, then the walls are likely to break. That will happen in the eyes, that may happen in the brain, that may happen in the other parts of the body as well. So there can be chest pain, which can be confused with any heart problem. So sometimes there is a difficulty of breathing, there is a irregular heartbeat. There can be blood in the urine if the blood pressure passes the threshold stage of that filtration of the urine. So blood in the urine is a very advanced, is found in very advanced cases of hypertension, not mild to moderate cases. And sometimes there can be typically pounding in your heads and ears. You'll hear that sounds in the ears, duck, 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 duck. Because of pressure, you hear those sounds. So as we compare that with the pressure of the water, when the pump is on, especially if the pump is very powerful, then there can be a sound of that water hitting the walls of the pipe. So duck, duck, duck. Similarly, there is a sound in case of hypertension, and many people perceive that sound inside their head or inside their ears. There can be irregular heartbeats also. And sometimes, which is very common, there will be no symptoms of this, or the person becomes irritable. So suddenly person becomes irritable. So that could, one of the causes could be increased blood pressure. And treatment, the mild cases of hypertension are effectively managed through the medicines or hypertensive drugs. There are a lot of newer drugs coming in the market, but any drug has got a side effects, so we need to be careful about taking those drugs. So drugs should not be taken without doctor's advice, and person should not change the dose or alter the dose without the medical opinion. And main important aspect of hypertension is lifestyle correction. Most of the hypertension cases are because of the wrong lifestyle, and it can be very easily managed by correction of the lifestyle. So I did not elaborate on that because It is very much a well-known discussion nowadays everywhere, lifestyle correction. Then of course, leaving the alcohol, tobacco, etc., weight reduction, exercise, salt restriction, all these are the measures which are taken for treating the hypertension. Again, the hypertension cannot be cured, it can be maintained properly with the help of the drugs and with the help of exercise and yoga. So as far as yogic management is concerned, there are two categories. One category is the person who is having good control of the hypertension or blood pressure with the drugs. Now we say in the class that certain asanas, we say that forward bending asanas are contraindicated for person having hypertension. But if the person is under your observation for some time, you know that person who comes to your class regularly and the person has got very good control of blood pressure, we can still give the asanas which are contraindicated for the hypertensive person, but with due care. So you should be understand that on a particular day, the person's blood pressure may be high, so you ask him to avoid certain practices. But certain practices which are contraindicated commonly can be given to the category 1 person with due care. What do I mean with due care? That we should keep on observing that person very well, then checking his blood pressure intermittently and checking the reports from the doctor intermittently. And so he will be able to practice most of the yogasana depending upon his condition of the body. There will be less contraindications, but as a blanket contraindication, we should stick to our stance that a particular asana should be avoided by hypertensive people, especially in the group yoga class, because we are not aware of there's so many people in a group class. So we should be very careful in avoiding those particular asanas for hypertensive people. And there is a category 2. We have to be very careful about such people in the class. So there is a fluctuation with the blood pressure even in spite of taking the drugs regularly. So then one has to be very careful because there might be some underlying cause, there might be some underlying cardiac problem also. So this category 2 people, we should be very careful in teaching yoga or taking up for yoga therapy also. So yogic management consists of, there are different considerations for managing the hypertension cases. The category 1, which is under control, almost all kinds of yoga practice can be given to them. So again, it is very important for managing hypertension. The few of the practices like Om chanting or mantra chanting, Bhramari pranayam, or cooling pranayams, or Shavasana, Yoga Nidra. These are very important sadhanas for managing the hypertension. And they should keep on doing simple asanas, they should keep on doing Sukshma Vyayam, all those things where they can keep on doing in the category 1. And Kriyas also with due care. If the person has got restriction on the intake of the salt, then we should be careful while doing Kriyas, because since we use water containing salt, so we can consider the use of water without salt also in such cases. So there are various means and methods of avoiding that, and still the person can practice the Kriyas. So, but we should, with due care, we should keep on, the experienced teacher should keep on observing these people if they are doing Kriyas. Jananeti can be done quite safely in these people. In the category 2 people, in those people who have got uncontrolled blood pressure, so even with medication, the blood pressure does not remain under control. So we should be careful, just give them simple movements of losing exercises or Sukshma, which are simple in nature, which will avoid jerky movements. Then we can just give simple deep breathing, Anulom Vilom Pranayam, or cooling pranayams and Bhramari, and Om chanting, and of course relaxation, Shavasana or Yoga Nidra or Dharana Dhyan practices. So these people may maintain the blood pressure better with these practices. And if they come to category 1 later on, then of course you can give them the category 1 practice which you have seen earlier. And of course, in both the categories, as we have discussed, that relaxation and dhyana can be given. And there are various methods of relaxation devised by different institutes which are very effective for controlling this stress-related hypertension, which they effectively control. And a lot of research has been done by Dr. K.K. Date many years back. He was one of the first cardiologists in Mumbai to take up the research on the relaxation and hypertension and cardiac problems. And he showed in his papers how effective it can be. And then, of course, Bhakti Yoga is also important for culturing the emotions because the stress is an important underlying factor for hypertension. So, Bhakti Yoga also is advised by many people. So, Bhakti Yoga means that surrender all emotions to God. That has been mentioned in Narada Bhakti Sutra, which is the beautiful rendition of this principle of bhakti. So, just like Yoga Sutra, Narada Bhakti Sutra is supposed to be one of the important scriptures of Bhakti Yoga. So, surrendering attitude should be developed in through Bhakti Yoga, which is very important for controlling of hypertension. So, these are all the types of sadhana which are advised for hypertension person. And hypertension person in category 1 or mild hypertension can be effectively managed through yoga sadhana. You will get the experience of many sadhakas, and you must have already got the experience of some sadhakas who were in the milder category of hypertension. And when they started attending the yoga classes, slowly and slowly, the dose of medication reduced automatically, because as you go for follow-up to the doctor, he will say that yes, now your blood pressure is under control. Let us try reducing the dose of the medication. So the medication dose reduces because of the yoga sadhana, and sometimes in milder cases, one can maintain the blood pressure without medications also, especially in the milder cases. In the moderate cases, of course, the moderate case may become mild because of the yoga sadhana. So yoga sadhana is the important tool for managing the blood pressure. So I'll not discuss all the sadhanas. Already we have discussed about that, and it's a common sense sadhana which are known to everybody. That means that whenever we are treating any kind of person as a yoga therapy, we should include the some practices for each and every kosha. So kosha-based therapy method becomes very simple, very effective, because we consider different aspects of the human personality through koshas. And if we have the sadhana which is focusing on a particular kosha, then we should include those sadhanas in our day-to-day practice. As far as therapy also is concerned, no need to go for complicated asanas or complicated practices. Even simple practice will help. So this should be the consideration not only for hypertension, but all the sadhana which is or yoga sadhana required for using yoga as therapy. So all the questions should be handled properly in the therapy so that the result is more long lasting. If you just use asana or some basic practices, the result will not be long lasting. But all these practices will lead to longer lasting results. Acceptance of the condition by the patient, which is very, very important, because the person does not accept कि मुझे कैसा हुआ ब्लड प्रेशर, मैं तो एकदम अच्छा आदमी हूँ, मैं ज़्यादा कुछ खाता पीता नहीं हूँ, डाइट मेंटेन करता हूँ, एक्सरसाइज करता हूँ, फिर भी मुझे क्यों हो गया. So okay, you have it because of other factors, you accept it and then try to overcome that. So if that is the right attitude, then the results are very good. So we should take efforts to give the practices on all the kosha levels. Then we'll discuss the ischemic heart disease. As we have mentioned, ischemia is the reduction of the blood flow. Whenever the blood flow reduces in any organ, it's called as ischemia. I'll be back in just 2 minutes.
Sir.